child psychic medium. Due to the religious beliefs at that time, I was only aware of spirits being angels or demons. I had no psychic mentor. I was taught what my parents thought they knew. At the age of 10, I was diagnosed with epilepsy. I had no idea, years later, a Bible scripture would be used against me for who I was born to be. That I would live a traumatic nightmare, as those closest to me did so in the name of God. In the King James Version of the Holy Bible, Mark chapter 5 verse 13 reads, "And forthwith Jesus gave them leave, and the unclean spirits went out and entered into the swine, and the herd ran violently down a steep place into the sea. They were about 2,000, and were choked in the sea." Over the next few years, my dad made comments from time to time referencing this scripture, comparing with the epilepsy, paranormal experiences, and normal adolescent behavior. At age 18, I was engaged to be married to a man I attended church and prayed with. I trusted him with every breath. He had made arrangements with his prior pastor to meet with us to make our wedding plans. I was so excited. I questioned why not our current pastor, but he just told me it was due to many years of being a member of that previous church. I believed him. As we traveled down a long country road in Lancaster, Kentucky to make arrangements for our future, I began feeling a little uneasy. I told myself it was just cold feet about our marriage. I mean, after all, although I lived on my own, I was still only 18 years old. We drove into the church parking lot, and to my surprise, a car identical to my dad's was parked there. I had not invited my dad because of years of severe emotional abuse. My fiance had never met my dad. This car must have belonged to someone else, right? As I stepped into the church building, a pastor and his wife that I was meeting for the very first time locked the entrance doors with the key on the inside. My dad appeared from the sanctuary. Yes, instant confusion set in. I was immediately forced to the floor and held down against my will by all who were there. They attempted to perform an exorcism on me. The force of their hands was physically hurting me. Several hours later, I escaped. I ran down this same country road that we entered on, hoping that someone would stop to my aid. It had turned dark, but the moon was glowing brightly and was my guiding light that night. Headlights behind me, I could not outrun the people I once knew. My dad and fiance grabbed me and threw me in the back seat. I tried so hard to free myself, but was told the child safety locks were on. So I finally gave up and sat quietly. At that point, realizing my engagement was over and was actually a setup, those who emotionally abused me in the name of religion would stop at nothing to make me submissive to their control. We returned to the church and I was forced back in. For many hours, as I was forcefully held down against my will, and painfully so, I explained to the pastor and his wife that I loved God. I had given my heart to God, that my dad was abusive, how my fiance had set me up alongside my dad. Why were there lies, judgments, deception, trickery, and abuse allowed and still acknowledged as a Christian? The pastor finally realized he and his wife had partaken in a kidnapping and mental abuse. He told everyone to stop. He said he wanted to talk to me in private. The pastor asked everyone to stay in the sanctuary. He whispered, "I know you're not demon-possessed. I'm going to unlock the door. I want you to wait outside while I explain to them. I will make sure one of them takes you home." Then I replied, "I don't feel safe. I don't trust them. I'm afraid they're going to hurt me. Please, can you take me home, Pastor? Please take me home." The pastor replied, "No, but I will make sure they don't hurt you." I knew in my mind there was no way that the pastor could promise that. I began creating my next escape route mentally. I trusted no one at this point. As soon as I heard the sound of the church doors closing together, I ran into the woods, praying for protection and for light to see within complete darkness. I knew nothing about Lancaster, Kentucky. I was alone and lost in the woods, running barefoot while my flesh was being ripped apart by brush and briar. Intuitively, I knew I would find a house in the woods. I allowed God to guide me, and there it was, a tiny country shack with a light on. The only path I could see to get to this house was to swim across a creek and continue through more brush and briar. I could hear the man I once was engaged to calling my name. That was scary. He was close behind, and I knew I had no choice, so I quietly made my way through the water. I stayed in the water until I could only faintly hear him. I ran through the brush and briars once more, staying focused on the light shining from the little shack nearby. Finally, I made it onto the porch of this house. I broke down, screaming, "Help me!" while falling to my hands and knees in exhaustion, which led to collapse. I was awakened by an elderly man and woman. The elderly lady helped wash away the blood from my body. I crawled inside their home because I was too weak to stand. The elderly man explained the congregation had been told the day prior that a man was bringing his demon-possessed daughter in, so service would be cut short. This was my confirmation that God had led me to this house, and that all of this had been arranged by my dad. The elderly man grabbed his shotgun as I was still trembling in fear. He told me not to worry. He would protect me. I asked him to call my real mother's family in Lee County, Kentucky. We shortly realized this elderly man and my mother's mother were cousins. God did guide me. God was with me throughout this journey. Although it was as if living within a nightmare, I kept faith and listened to my intuition. So, my dear friends, when you feel as if you've painfully lost everything, that your life has came crashing down around you, remember these things. What wasn't good for me was removed. With faith and trust, a way was made that was better than I could have ever imagined. I stayed focused on the light. I was divinely protected. I was given a way out. I listened to my intuition. The light provided by the moon, it illuminated the truth and shed light on my path. When the world was against me, God knew my heart and intentions. It is very true. We are never alone. May we heal and release together on this journey. Much love.